So the next examples are all going to use, so these are all examples of where we are going to use the average or use averages to figure out something else about the problem. Alright, so this is going to require you to do a little bit more algebra in these examples. Alright, so suppose we know the following information. Alright, we know that a student scored a 92, a 75, and a 62. We want to figure out what score the student has to receive on the fourth exam if they want their average to be at least an 80. Alright, assuming each exam is of equal weight. So in this case, we're going to assume all the exams are worth the same amount of points. Alright, remember, average is the mean. At least an 80, so 80 is going to be the bare minimum, so we're going to use the 80. We want our mean to be an 80. Alright, that's what we want. We want an 80 to equal the sum of all of our scores over the number of scores, so we're going to have 4, right? We only have 3 right now, but we want 4 altogether. So that's what we have to figure out. Well, we have to figure out what the sum needs to be. And we're going to use the fact that we know a part of the sum. So we want the mean to equal the sum of all the scores divided by all the exam. Alright, so I'm going to let x equal the score on the fourth exam, because that's what I want to figure out. And a lot of times in algebra, x is the value we solve for. Alright, so I'm going to set it up using what I understand about the mean. I want the mean to equal 80, because 80 is the minimum. Remember, the top part is the sum of all the exams. All 4. So I know 3 of them. 92 plus 75 plus 62. And then the fourth one is where we put the x value. That's the unknown, right? We don't know x. And so that's what we're going to solve for. We're going to solve for the x. So that's what we want to solve for. So that's going to be a part of our problem. Alright, so it goes up here because it's a part of my score. So it's the sum of all the scores. It's the top part of the fraction. We divide by how many had? Well, we're going to divide by 4 because there are 4 scores there. Just one of them I just don't know. Solve for x. So to solve for x, the first thing we want to get rid of is the divide by 4. So to get rid of the divide by 4, we have to multiply by 4. And whatever you do to one side of an algebra equation, you have to do to the other. That allows this 4 to reduce with that 4, cancels it out. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and multiply the 8 times 80. Alright, so the 8 times 80 comes out to 32. And at the same time, I'm going to add up the scores that I already know. Alright, so I'm going to take the 92, add it to the 75, add it to the 62, and then there'll still be a plus x. And so when I add those 3 scores up, that comes out to 229 plus x. So at this point, you can kind of see where we're going. I need the sum of my 4 test scores to equal 320 to get the average to be at least an 80. Alright, and so my last step is, well, then to figure out, well, what that x value needs to be. What do I need to add to my current sum of scores, which is 229, to get 320, at least 320? Well, you subtract the 229 from both sides. Alright, so when you subtract that, that comes out to be 91. So x is 91. So we need at least a 91. A score of 91. You can check your answer. Check it. Take 91, put it up in the air, and make sure it came out the right. So take 91, add it to 92, 75, 62, add your 91, and divide by 4 and make sure that the average comes out to 80. And it does. You can check it. It does come out to 80. Alright, so we're going to do another example that's similar to this. Alright, so suppose that student has taken out 4 exams. With the total exams, there are a total of 5 exams in the course, each with equal weight. The current student's exam average is 72. So I don't know what the individual, so this one's a little tougher than the last example. I don't know what the individual exam scores are, but I know what their average is. Alright, what's the minimum score that a student needs to receive on the 5th exam to maintain an average of or at 70? So 70 is what our goal is. Alright, so we want a mean, an average of 70. Alright, at least. That's the bare minimum. Alright, so that's the ultimate goal we're going to figure out. I'm going to let x be the score on the 5th exam, because that's what we want to know. All right, what do I need to score in the 5th exam to get a mean of 70 or better? All right, so that's sort of the setup. Our current average is a 72, all right, for the first 4 exams. And so we're going to use that. I'm going to set up my mean. So remember, the 72 equals the sum of the first 4 exams divided by 4. That's how that 72 average would have been to figure out. So again, I want to figure out the sum of the first 4 exams. That's what we're figuring out here. Because I'm going to need to use that kind of like we did in the previous example. Alright, so to do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Alright, 72 times 4 means that the sum of those exams comes out to 288. That's the sum of the first 4 exams. Alright, in order to get an average of a 72 on 4 exams, the sum needed to be 288. Alright, 208 divided by 4 is 72. Alright, so I'm going to use that knowledge to figure out what I need on my 5th exam. Alright, so I need the 5th exam to be add to the sum of the 4 exams, and I need that average to come out to 70. So again, I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to have 70. This is going to equal the sum of the 5 exams divide by 5, right? Because now I have 5 exams. Well, the sum of the 5 exams would be the sum of the first 4 plus the unknown exam, plus x. And so 70 needs to equal the 288, the sum of the first 4 exams, plus the unknown exam that I want to solve for, divided by 5, because now I have 5 exams, because I added that x value up top. And so I now need to solve this. This is what I have to solve for x. Alright, so the first step is to get rid of the divide by 5 by multiplying both sides by 5. And so we take 5 times 70. So we need to have the sum of the first 5 exams to add to 350 is what that adds to. And equals the 288 plus x. And so in order to have 5 exams average to at least a 70, the score needs to be at least, the sum of the scores need to be at least 350. Alright, so I need to know what that x value I need to add to my current sum, which is 288, to get 350. Alright, so we'll subtract 288 from both sides to figure out what that x value needs to be. 62. Alright, so we need to have a score. So the 5th exam needs to be at least a 62 to keep the average at a 70. You can check it. Take 62, put it in this top one here for x, and that should add to 350. When you take 350 divided by 5, the average comes out to 70. Alright, so at least a 62 in order to keep their average. Alright, so the next 2 examples are going to be a little different because the book does a couple of these. And again, it's just important to understand how sometimes you get these values in statistics, and it's important to understand how they work, right? This is statistics. Alright, so the next example is we're given 2 groups of people and their averages, and I want to then average them together as a total. Alright, that's what this is. Alright, so I have a group of men and a group of women. So I have 20 men, 24 women. We know the average GPA for the men was 2.65, and the average GPA for the women was 3.17. If we took the entire class, what would be the overall average for everybody? Alright, so the average GPA for the entire class. Well, the average GPA, which is the mean for the entire class, would be the sum of all the GPAs, both men and women, divided by the total number of students. Alright, so all of them, meaning we'd add all the men and all the women. And so what you do is, well, what the average is we've averaged out that we're saying all 20 men, each individual one would average out to 2.65. And so when I'm adding them up, it's just the same as taking 2.65 and adding it up 20 times. Same thing for the 24 women. The average means we've averaged out the GPAs over the 24 women. And so when I want to add them up, I can take the 3.17, sorry, and add it up 24 times, and that would give me my overall sum for the women. And so when we want to find the total, it's the sum of all the GPA scores. So I'm going to take the 20 men. Their average was 2.65, so I'm going to multiply 20 times 2.65. That'll be the sum of the GPA scores for men. And then I'm going to do the same thing for women. There were 24 women. Their average was 3.17, and so that would give me the sum of the GPA scores for women. We divide by the total. The total would be, we'd add these up, so there are 20 men and 24 women, so 20 plus 24 would mean there are 44 students altogether. And so we divide by 44. And so up top, if I like to simplify the numerator first. If I multiply that out, it comes out to be 129.88 divide by 44. And so the average GPA for the class comes out to be 2.93. And again, you should make sure your number makes sense. It should be between the two. It should be somewhere between the low value and the high value, and it is. The number should make sense, right? It should be bigger than 2.65 and less than 3.17, right? And maybe a little closer to 3.17 because there's more women. And this one number does come out that way. All right, the next two examples are again similar to this. All right, this is actually the same type of question, but we're going to ask for a different piece of the puzzle. All right, we have 20 men and 24 women again. The average GPA for the men is 2.65. The class average, so we're given a different number. The class average, so the overall average for the entire class, was 2.75. Find the average for the women in this case. All right, and it is different than the previous one. And so I'm going to let X be what I'm looking for. I'm going to let X equal the GPA average of the 24 women in the class. Because that's what I'm looking for, right? That's the question we're answering. All right, the overall average, the class average, total average, was 2.75. All right, so I'm going to use that. And so remember, like we did this before, it would be the GPA for the men times the men, number of men, plus the GPA for the women times the number of women over the total, and the total is still 44. All right, what we don't know, so the X value is here, the GPA for the women, that's the X value. All right, and so I plug everything else in. 2.75 is my overall GPA. I know the overall GPA for men was 2.65, and there are 20 of them. I'm looking for the GPA for women, so that's the X value, right? The average value for women, so I'm going to let that be X. And I know that there are 24 women, so that GPA, once I find it out, would multiply by 24 to get my class average. All over the 44 total students. That's what we have to solve for X. All right, so the first thing is we get rid of the division. You get rid of the division by multiplying by whatever we're dividing by. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 44 to get rid of the 44 on the bottom. All right, so when we multiply that out, this comes out to 121. I'm actually going to multiply this as well just to make, when I write it down here, a little easier. So I'm going to multiply out the 2.65 times the 20, the GPA for the men. All right, that comes out to 53, and then 24x as well. I just reordered it just because, again, it's more comfortable typically for students to recognize the x after. Means the same thing. X times 24 is the exact same thing as 24 times x. All right, now it's a little more manageable. Now if I solve for x, I'm going to isolate x. So the first thing I need to get rid of is the 53. So I subtract 53 from both sides. So you take your 121 minus 53, which comes out to 68. That's zeroed out, so it left me with 24 times x. Divide by my 24. And x is going to equal whatever 68 divided by 24 is. So that comes out to 2.83 is the average GPA for the women. Again, it should be higher because I know the class average was higher than the men's average, but not a whole lot higher. All right, because again, that's not a whole lot higher than the men's. It's only about a tenth higher. All right, so again, the number should make sense, and it does. All right, the last one of these types. All right, so suppose we have a group of 7 students. They have an average credit card debt of $400. A group of 10 graduates have an average credit card debt of $1,200. All right, then what is the average credit card debt of the group? All right, so out of the total, so we want all of the students, both students and graduates of the group. All right, so we want the total. All right, round your answer to the nearest penny. So again, this is the total average. So total average. What we take the sum of all the debt, both parts, divide by the total number of people. All right, which in this case there would be 17, right? 7 students, 7 graduates. All right, so we know we're going to divide by 17. Up top, we're going to have the sum of the debt. Well, 10 of them had a debt of 4. That's the way we read that. So we have 10, sorry, I said 10. 7 of them had a debt of 400. So 7 times 400 is the student debt. We add to that the 10 graduates that had a debt of 1,200. So 10 of them had a debt of 1,200. And again, I like to simplify the top before I divide, so the order of operations is followed. So I'll take the 7 times the 400, add to it the 10 times the 1,200. It comes out to 14,800, and then the last thing I do is the division. And so the total average debt, credit card debt, comes out to be, round to the penny, 870.59 cents. So that would be the average credit card debt for the group. Again, the graduate students had higher credit card debt than the students. All right, that stops the examples of different ways that we can use average. The next set of notes I'll pick up in the next video.